You've read some books, you've tried writing a bit, and you're hooked on screenwriting. And because you're hooked, you want to dive in to get good at the craft. And you've heard you have to practice and work at it, that you have to read scripts and watch things. But what are the things you should be focusing on? What are the basics, the core of screenwriting that you have to learn so you can actually begin to improve in the craft? I'm going to give you what I think are the 7 most important things that if you learn to master them, they will transform you into the screenwriter that you're hoping to become. And I have some incredible news to share with you about my Screenwriting Fast Track screenwriting course, which I'll get to in a bit, so be sure to stick around for that amazing, incredible news. I hope I'm not overhyping it. First, the 7 screenwriting basics. Number 1, knowing the difference between story and storytelling. Screenwriting consists of 2 pieces. There's the story itself, and then there's the way you tell the story. And a story is simply someone who wants something badly, they're having trouble getting it, and they get it or they don't. That's what you need to have a story. It doesn't matter if you tell that story as a movie, a comic, a TV show, a novel, a commercial, a song, doesn't matter. A story is a story is a story. And one of the first things that you have to learn is what are the pieces that you need to tell a complete story. And when you craft any story, especially one for the screen, if you aren't paying attention to all of those pieces, the story's gonna fall flat. And if your story falls flat, the audience doesn't care what happens to your characters. And you need the audience to know what they're supposed to be rooting for along the way. Maybe they're rooting for the couple to get together, or for the hero to save the planet, or for the graduate to get a job, or maybe they're rooting for the criminal to get caught, or the bully to get what they deserve, or the corrupt salesman to lose everything. But either way, we know what to root for because the story is clear. But as a screenwriter, you also have to be concerned about how you tell that story. Maybe it's in flashback, or straight linear, or flash forward. Maybe it's from the point of view of the victim, or the cop, or the corrupt CEO. And as a screenwriter, if you don't know what elements make up the story, and you don't know what elements make up the storytelling, you're not going to know how to effectively write a screenplay. You're not going to know how to do it. Or worse, you won't even know how to interpret any notes or feedback that you're going to be getting on your script. A simple way to keep these 2 things separate is to realize that everything that's story related involves the characters of the world that you're creating. And everything that's storytelling related, that involves the audience's emotional reaction and experience of participating in the story. Now, those 2 things are highly nuanced. There's a lot of moving parts, but if you're just looking for something broad to hang your hat onto, story is characters, storytelling is audience, and you as a screenwriter have to know how to distinguish between them. And if you don't, well, you're just playing at being a screenwriter. So if you don't want to play at being a screenwriter, you've got to start learning all the tools and terms and techniques that can help you craft a story and that can help you tell that story really well. Screenwriting basic number 2, you've got to know how to build characters. Before we start building characters, you have to know what kinds of characters you have available to you. And when it comes to stories for the screen, you have only 4 to choose from. Okay, there's a main character, there's typically only 1. There's supporting characters. Usually there's 2 to 5, rarely more than that in film. TV sometimes has a few more, but most of the time, 2 to 5. There's string characters. These are the characters who typically do one primary thing. They're the comic relief, or the pessimist, or the fortune teller, etc. And then the other character are background characters. Those might be speaking parts, but usually they're not. It's just like the henchman of the bad guy, or waiters in a restaurant, or other drivers on the road, or fans in the stadium, all that kind of stuff. They're just part of the background. And each of these characters has certain requirements to build them adequately. Some of those characters arc, but others don't. And one mistake a lot of new screenwriters make is trying to give character arcs to characters who shouldn't be getting them in the first place. Now, in practice, maybe 3 or 4 characters get some semblance of an arc in your film. 3 or 4 maybe, but that's it. And only the main and supporting characters at that. But what is an arc? I mean, how do you build one? What things must you consider about the personality and emotions of the character that you're trying to arc? And what you have to do as a screenwriter is learn what are the questions that you should and shouldn't be asking about character building. More importantly, can you even explain what a character arc is using an example from a movie that you love? I mean, where does the character start? Where do they end up? How and why do they move throughout the story? And the reason characters are so important is because that's who the audience is going to connect with. I mean, audiences might come to see a movie because they're intrigued by the premise, or they really like the actors in it, or they really like the world or IP the movie's based on, but that doesn't keep them in the seat. It doesn't keep them watching. They keep watching because the characters are interesting and have been built properly, or because the storytelling is engaging. Preferably both. So once you begin crafting a story for the screen, you must pay attention to the characters. And if you don't, you're in trouble without even having written a single word of your script. Screenwriting basic number 3, screenplay format and software. Now, screenplay format is something a lot of new and intermediate writers like to gripe about. You may even see in online groups people saying things like, just write it however you want, or do it like whatever you want. And to an extent, those are kind of true, but not really. I mean, no professional writer I know says, disregard screenplay formatting conventions. Not a single one. They all know this to be true. Format helps you tell the story. Format is a storytelling tool. It helps people reading your script be able to track with it as you want them to track with it. So ignore the formatting conventions at your own peril. What you should be doing is learning these rules. And if you hear someone talk about screenwriting rules, they're mostly related to two things: format and story. Now, story we've kind of talked about. Format, though, is storytelling. So again, that's why you need to know what is story and what is storytelling. So learn the rules, learn the formatting conventions. Of course you can break them. Of course you can. But if you don't know what they are, you won't know how to break them in a way that both helps you tell your story and communicates to the reader that you understand what the norms of formatting are. And one of the things that can help you follow those formatting conventions is to use screenwriting software. There are several free software programs for screenwriting that there really is no excuse to not be using screenwriting software. If you want to go down this path and you want to improve your craft, get some software. There are free versions available. And if you don't want to get any software, if you're like, nope, I'm not even getting a free version of software, you should probably seriously consider whether you want to continue down the screenwriting road. Number 4 of screenwriting basics, how to build scenes. Scenes are just smaller stories within the larger story of your script. And like the story for your entire script, screens should be doing what a story does. I mean, they're about someone who wants something badly, they're having trouble getting it, they get it or they don't. That's what happens in a scene. And scenes should do a bunch of things. I mean, they should feel inevitable in that the audience never questions why a particular scene is taking place. Like, hey, this feels like the right scene. I'm not bumping out of the story. This is all good. It feels inevitable. And yet, they should also be unexpected. The scenes should feel unexpected in that the audience shouldn't be able to predict exactly what scene is coming. I mean, we might figure out like, okay, this scene is probably going to happen in the next few, but we can't predict 10 scenes down. We shouldn't be able to do that. That's predictable. We don't want that. We want unexpected. And scenes are also not always determined by the slug lines. I mean, you can have multiple scenes take place at the same location. So one slug line, several scenes. And you can have one scene take place over many locations. So many slug lines, one scene. And what you as a screenwriter have to learn is how to craft and build scenes that tell many stories. Now, here's a simple litmus test. Nearly every scene you write should be one of the following: a negotiation, a seduction, or a fight. Again, it's someone trying to get something, and they get it or they don't. So how do they try to get it? And whether they get it or not informs the next scene and what they're going to try to do next. And each scene or groups of scenes should be shaping the character and moving them along on their character arc. But if you don't know what a scene is or how to build one, you're going to be in trouble. So learning to write scenes can be a very helpful exercise in your transformation to a better writer. Just like hitting the like button or subscribing or leaving a comment can help others find this channel and this video. And if you're finding value, I really do appreciate you doing those things, or even supporting me through Patreon, which is linked below. And don't forget, some incredible news is coming about my screenwriting course, the Screenwriting Fast Track, so don't miss that. But what about the screenwriting basic of writing, action, and description? You know, planning and building scenes is one thing. Learning to write them, that's a whole other thing. Writing a screenplay is not like writing a novel or short story. Screenwriting is a practice in economy and impressions, and more importantly, emotions. The things you write in the action lines, whether it's action, description, a fight, a love scene, a character battling inner demons, those should be doing two things: showing the audience or the reader what we see and hear, because screen stories are a visual and auditory medium after all, so you got to be doing that. But you also want to be writing and giving an impression without explicitly saying what we, the audience, should be feeling. That should come across in your writing. It should come across as like, oh, I'm supposed to be feeling happy or sad or nervous, without you saying you should be feeling happy or sad or nervous. So you, as a screenwriter, you have a story and you know the story, and as long as you include all those story beats, the story is going to make sense. It's going to feel satisfying. So as you write, okay, I'm including all of that, but you also have to tell that story. And the action lines are a primary way of doing that. So you know what you want to say, but now you have to figure out how to say it. So you're communicating the visuals and the emotions. And this is where the mantra of show, don't tell comes into play, because you don't want to be telling the audience how to feel. The way you write, the sentence structures and language you use, the tools of storytelling you bring to bear all contribute to how the audience feels while reading the script. And this emotion gets carried through to everyone who ends up working on the film if you're able to sell your script and it goes into production. In reality, the description is where you can quickly tell if the script is written by an amateur or a professional. You know, a lot of new writers want to overlook this element, but if you can learn to write good action lines, you will be so far ahead of the curve, it'll be laughable. Dialogue is screenwriting basic number 6, and it's not a mistake that I'm listing it as number 6. It is less important than everything I've mentioned so far. No, it's not, you think. Movies are all about dialogue. Wrong. Movies are about story and about storytelling. The audience is paying for a storytelling experience, and dialogue is one tool of many to help you tell the story. It's not the only tool, contrary to popular opinion. Popular opinion is like, oh, you gotta have great dialogue or you don't have a movie. That's not true. And you don't even actually need dialogue to tell a story. You don't have to have it to have a movie. But if you use it, you have to use it correctly and to help you tell the story. And there are so many issues in dialogue from new writers: overwriting, unnecessary exposition, characters talking about what we, the audience, are already seeing, and the list goes on and on. So yeah, you have to learn how to write dialogue. Of course you do. But it's not about learning all the tips and tricks of writing dialogue. It's gaining a proper understanding of how to use the storytelling tool of dialogue. In reality, it's just like any other tool in the toolbox. I mean, some tools, they're all-purpose tools. Okay, you can use them for lots of things. Other tools, they're specialty tools that should only be used for one specific purpose. And as a screenwriter, you have to learn to become familiar with and know when to use and when not to use any tool at your disposal. And dialogue is just a tool. A powerful one, yes, but it's still one tool of many. And if you want to learn to be a master storyteller, you have to learn how to masterfully handle the tool of dialogue. The last screenwriting basic element you need to know is to be able to recognize the difference between professional and amateur scripts. But a lot of new writers, they approach this one backward. They start trying to read a bunch of scripts to learn from them about what to do, what not to do, without going through the other basics on this list first. Now, what I mean is that if you don't know what the elements of a story are, okay, so I don't even know what an inciting incident is, how are you going to recognize that in the screenplay that you're reading? How are you going to recognize that moment? If you don't know what some of the storytelling tools that you have available, like plant and payoff, for example, if you don't know what those are, I mean, how are you going to recognize them when you're reading a script? Now, that's not to say to not read screenplays. You should absolutely be reading screenplays. But if you're reading screenplays and you're not investing yourself into learning the other things that I've outlined here, you can read all the screenplays you want, but they're not going to do you any good, because you won't be able to recognize the difference between the bad ones, the good ones, and the great ones. And why this matters is when you're learning the craft of screenwriting. You're going to be writing stuff, okay? You're going to be writing. But how are you going to know if it's any good if you can't tell the difference between a bad script, a good script, and a great script? So if you don't know the difference between story and storytelling, if you don't know how to build characters or scenes, if you don't know what the formatting conventions are and how to recognize if someone's breaking those conventions, and if you don't know what good action writing is or what good dialogue is, you won't be able to recognize in your own writing when you progress from a mediocre writer to a better one. And without a solid grasp of these basics, you simply won't be able to get to where you want to be as a screenwriter. And I want to help you get there. I want to help you become a master storyteller. And these things I've just outlined are the major sections of my Screenwriting Fast Track course, a course meant to transform you and your writing so you have the foundation you need to get on the fast track to becoming a master storyteller. But I have a big announcement. From today through Monday, November 29th, you can use the code that's on the screen right now and get 20% off any tier of the Screenwriting Fast Track course. There are 3 tiers. The Essentials tier is the bare minimum. The Complete tier includes everything in the Essentials tier, plus additional lessons, writing exercises, and feedback from me. The Premium tier includes everything from the other 2 tiers, plus even more lessons, exercises, and feedback. And if you want to massively transform yourself and improve upon your screenwriting foundation and become a master storyteller, the Screenwriting Fast Track will get you there. And until Monday night, you can use this code and get 20% off that course, which is the screenwriting course I wish I would have had when I was starting out. And again, the screenwriting basics I outlined here in this video are the main sections of that course. It will give you the basics and foundation you need to become the writer that you want to become. And I don't typically give discounts or run sales, so this is your shot, and you have until Monday evening. If you want to learn more about the Screenwriting Fast Track, click that link below. If you want 20% off, click the link below, enter that code at checkout, and you'll be well on your way. Again, I want to help you become a better screenwriter. And if you found any value and you haven't already, please be sure to like, subscribe, bell, all of that. I really do appreciate it. And when you go to tell a story, be sure you tell a story that matters. See you later.